everyone. It is just 2 minutes after 1 o'clock, so we're actually starting on time, which is always a good thing to do. My name is Carrie Thurlow. I'm the Senior Vice President of Advocacy for Leading Age Minnesota. Leading Age Minnesota is one of 2 organizations that make up the long-term care imperative. Care Providers is the other, and my colleague Toby Pearson from Care Providers is here. We do want to thank St. Benedict Senior Community for hosting this issue forum on senior care issues. This is one of 10 legislative candidate forums that we are hosting throughout the state that are dedicated solely to senior care issues. And you will see that this is one of the larger ones that we do because it does encompass 2 Senate districts. And 11 out of the 12 candidates have agreed to join us today. The candidates have been given the questions in it. Oh, this is not good. The questions, the candidates have been given questions in advance to look at, and they have them in front of them. But before we get to the questions that we'll cover today, and once we go through the prepared questions, there will be an opportunity for audience questions focused on senior care issues, since this is a senior care issue forum. Before we get to audience questions and before we get to the prepared questions, we'll ask each of the candidates to just take 1 minute to introduce themselves to each of you. So maybe with that, Ms. Krause, do you want to maybe kick things off, and then we'll kind of proceed down the line from there with introductions.
All right, does this work? All right. Hello everybody, my name is Matthew Krause. I'm running for State House District 13B. I am running because of the reason that we are not getting along in our state politics. We are not making things work. Nobody's crossing any party lines. And I just want to be somebody that is willing to go in there and help fix something like that. Thank you.
My name is Tama Tice. I just took a bite of my brownie. Sorry about that, but it is so good. Thank you. I'm the current representative for District 14A. And my husband and I have been in the St. Cloud area for over 36 years and have raised our sons, and now one of them lives here and one lives in the Milwaukee area. And then actually we've got 3 sons, long story, and one's in Sauk Rapids. But I am vice chair of the Aging and Long-Term Care Committee, which was a newer committee in the House of Representatives, and was very excited to have the opportunity to work with folks and get some really good legislation started. Our hope is that we started the ball rolling last year, and we will continue that ball, hopefully till forever, because there definitely is a lot of work that we have to get done. But as a side note, if you come to the music that St. Ben's will have every so often, and you watch Harbor Drive Hookup, that is my son and daughter-in-law, John and Amy. So I hope you see them.
Hi, my name is Annie Buckfold. I'm running for House Seat 13A. I live in St. Joseph with my family. And I'm running in large part due to the fact that I worked a lot on transportation this past year. I see issues as oftentimes more related than separate. So transportation was an issue that I was working on primarily because that was of concern to people in St. Cloud. But my personal experience, I'm really glad to be here today. I actually did an undergrad abroad in Denmark in a field very much related to what we're going to be talking about today. Basically a professionalized field of support and care providers. And then I came back to the States. I ended up the University of Maine, the state of Maine, wanted me to come and participate in a grad program out there. So I got my master's in social work, primarily working to educate the undergrad students there on this field that's unique to Denmark. And then I actually focused my studies on gerontology in the state of Maine. So very much familiar with the aging crisis we're faced with and the whole, just kind of that whole field. So I'm excited to be here today. I've got 4 young kids. I've got a brother who's got a disability and works as a PCA. I've got 2 parents that are aging, and also parent-in-laws. And we don't have the big families that people once did to help care for them as they aged. The burden is really going to fall on my husband and myself and my sister-in-law. So I feel the pressure that we all do about seniors in the state of Minnesota, so happy to be here today.
Good afternoon, my name is Zachary Dorholt, a candidate for 14B, which is about half of St. Cloud, everything on the east side here in Minden Haven Township. My full-time job, other than being a dad, I'm a mental health professional. I'm a counselor at Central Minnesota Mental Health Center, where I specialize in working with adults who live with serious and persistent mental illness. I have my undergrad and one of my masters from St. Cloud State University, and another in master's in marriage and family therapy from St. Mary's. I'm also part owner of a little restaurant. I did serve one term. I thought we did a lot of good things, and I'd like to get back to St. Paul to make sure good things continue to happen, especially in the healthcare field, which is where I spend a vast majority of my time.
Well, good afternoon, and thanks for coming today. My name is Jim Knobloch, and I'm the current state representative for this area that you're in, the east side of St. Cloud. I live a couple miles from here, just outside of the city limits in Haven Township of southeast St. Cloud. I also represent a good part of northern St. Cloud and some of the area around St. Cloud State and Tech High School. I was born and raised in St. Cloud. Some of you that are here at St. Ben's might know my parents, Mark and Vivian Knobloch. And I'm pleased to be one of the legislators who I feel has really been able to accomplish a lot in the last couple years. As the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, which is the budget committee, I feel I played a very integral role in the nursing home funding bill that we passed, which had some significant increased funding to nursing homes around the state. In fact, this particular facility was the second highest in the state in terms of the amount of money it got, almost a $2 million increase from what it had had previously. I'm a person who can get things done with the other side. The one major finance bill that did pass, the budget bill down there this year, was the bill that I was the author of in the House, and I'm pleased that the Pioneer Press named me as the most bipartisan Republican in the Minnesota House when they looked at our voting records. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Hello, I'm Jeff Howe. I represent District 13A, which is a small part of Wake Park, St. Joe, Rockville. Oh, should I name them all the way out to Painesville, Kimball, Linden, and now Fairhaven Township. So it's kind of the bottom half of the C, as Senator Fischbach would put it, around St. Cloud. I served 16 years in the St. Cloud Fire Department as a firefighter and a fire marshal. Then I served another 10 years with the City of Wake Park as their fire marshal, building official. And I've also served 19 years as a volunteer firefighter for the City of Rockville, where I live. During that period of time, I also served in the military. I served 3 years in the Navy and 33 years, I think it is, in the Minnesota Army National Guard. I lived in Rockville with my family of 4. Well, actually, I'm getting this off. I got 4 kids, 4 children, all out of the house. I got Molly there and my lovely wife. I did serve 2 years in the city council, so I know what local government means to folks before joining the legislature 2 terms ago. Thank you.
I'm Michelle Fischbach. It is on, okay. I'm Michelle Fischbach. I'm the state senator from District 13, and Jeff alluded to the C that I described the district as. It's a C that around St. Cloud starts Sauk Rapids, Sartell, kind of comes around as St. Joe, goes all the way out to Painesville, and then down around to Kimball and some of Clearwater. So that's the C around St. Cloud he was talking about. But I've served since 1996 in the Senate. I've served as president of the Senate. I've served as the chair of higher ed. And right now I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee and the Finance Committee and the Rules Committee and the Commerce Committee. And I'm happy to be here, and I just wanted to say too quickly that Representative O'Driscoll couldn't be here today. He had to work, and so he'd already had work scheduled before the notice for the forum came in. So if there is something you do want to talk to him about, please feel free to contact him. But just happy to be here today. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm Jerry Ralph. I am the Republican endorsed candidate for SD14. That's the inside of the C, if you wish. St. Cloud, Wade Park, St. Augusta, a couple of townships over across the river. I'm a 30-year resident of the community, former Marine, Vietnam vet, and I've been asked why am I running? When John Peterson announced that he wasn't going to run, I thought, I was an attorney in the community for many years. I had a small business in the community. I've raised 2 separate families in the community. I've always been a volunteer for many activities in the community, and I thought this is a chance to put back in an entirely different way, that I can do some good things for the community. Interestingly, we just finished up a healthcare or a long-term care forum this morning, and the issues that face long-term care in Minnesota are many, and they are complicated. I feel that with the background that I have, that I can do several things. First of all, as an attorney, my job was to bring people together. A lot of times people who didn't even want to be in the same room together. And that was something that I did very well. I also have the background to analyze issues and try to bring synthesis to a proper solution. So thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Hi, my name is Eric Putnam, and Tam and I are vying to represent District 14A, which does not resemble any letter of the alphabet, or really any feasible or reasonable shape whatsoever. It's really just the southern half of St. Cloud with the western half, and then St. Augusta as well, and Wade Park. So that's the district of 14A, although it sounds more like an apartment. It's actually this sort of strange shape that is the southern half of 14. I'm a professor at St. John's. I teach in the Communication Studies department. I've taught there for 13 years now. What I study is public arguments, civic deliberation, being a citizen. And I feel that we're at a crisis in our sense of citizenship right now, locally, nationally. When you think of how people talk about politics, the advertisements that you receive, and who participates in politics, in my estimation, it's inadequately accountable, transparent, and inclusive. And so I'm running partially to change that, to make an effort to make politics more accountable, more reasonable, more civil, and more attentive to the needs of people.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Wolgamott, and I'm a candidate for the Minnesota State Senate in District 14, which, again, reminder, is all of St. Cloud, Wade Park, St. Augusta, and Minden-Haven townships. I live right here in St. Cloud with my wife, Nicole, and our 2 beautiful, amazing daughters, Lily and Polly. I work as a realtor with Century 21, and I'm also an assistant high school football coach over at Sauk Rapids Rice. So every day I get to work directly with businesses and families and kids, and I see firsthand the negative consequences that the lack of progress in the legislature has on people in our community. That's a big reason why I'm running. The bickering, the procrastinating, the gridlock. We have so many issues at stake, and we've got to set aside the tribalistic ideologies. We've got to set aside the partisan games and come together and get things done. As a realtor, it's my job every day to represent my clients' top interests, but ultimately I reach out to other agents from other companies, and we put deals together, we move forward, and that's the kind of approach I hope to bring as our next state senator.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Williamson. I'm running for Minnesota State Senate, District 13. I'm a graduate of Sauk Rapids Rice High School in 2000. I'm not a career politician. I'm very new to this whole process, actually. But I really love, Minnesota. I love our community, and I'm willing to work hard to make it a better place for all of us. I believe in very progressive, liberal kind of policies that, make sure that the wealthy are paying their fair share in taxes, not, putting it on the burdens of the working class so much. And I think that, really we all do better when we all do better. We can work together to create a beautiful Minnesota in the environment, in the education, and in healthcare. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, good job, candidates, for sticking with the time limit. That was good. All right, Representative Tice, we're going to start with you with question number 1, and then we'll, so if somebody wants to pass a microphone down to Representative Tice while I'm reading the question. And for audience members, if you want to play along with the questions, there are copies of the questions in the back as well. So question number 1. Describe to us about any personal experiences that you've had with family, friends, or even yourself with receiving long-term care services, be it in a nursing home, assisted living community, adult daycare, or receiving services in home. And these are, you'll have 2 minutes to answer this question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes.
Okay, I grew up in Watkins, which is, 25 minutes southwest of here. And my dad was one of the instrumental holders of starting the nursing home in Watkins. And so I learned a little bit, even though I was a teenager, I did pay attention a little bit to what was all going on, and of course, kept in contact with the construction of the home and the goings on. And my grandmother and grandfather and several other family members were also up there at one time. Some of the other things that I've done since then is I've been on the foundation board at Good Shepherd, and learned a lot about dementia because at that time they were doing the memory loss cottages, and so had an opportunity to go through there quite a bit. They were just starting to open up one of the units and really learned a lot about that. I've also been on the Quiet Oaks Hospice board of directors, and right now my husband is currently on the board. And also just, quite frankly, we spent New Year's Eve up here because John and Amy were playing, and so have just had a wonderful chance to kind of come and see a different side of nursing homes. I know one of the programs that was really struggling was some of these fun, feel-good opportunities for folks in some of their homes. They didn't have the funding to do this, and so it's been really nice to take part in some of the different communities to see what nice things that they've added back in, because some homes couldn't do it. Some of the smaller ones couldn't afford to do it. And to see how the interaction of everyone and the smiles on their faces, and we all know music is quite an interesting, helpful tool, and that it's very, I can't tell you how many times folks have come up to John and Amy afterwards and said, "You have no clue what this means to my parent." They respond to the music, and so that enjoyment is twofold for me.
Yeah, so my experiences with nursing homes and assisted living and that sort of thing is primarily of my grandparents and my great aunts and uncles. Many of them were actually able to live in their homes till their last days, but some of them moved on to nursing homes. As a kid, I didn't have to think too much about the financial aspect of it or how costly it was. But just got to be present in those spaces. As I've gotten older, and when I was in my master's program out in Maine, visited a number of settings, institutions for aging adults with dementia, people who are living in their homes with some supports, not always everything they needed. And one of the things I started to realize, I should also say I also managed a group home for adults with disabilities at one point, and one thing that struck me as I've gotten older is, and I should also add, my mother-in-law worked in a nursing home in Breckenridge, Minnesota. We talked about this a lot, was how difficult it is to work in those settings as care staff. The burnout, staff turnover, and how that interferes with the quality of care oftentimes. And so when I'm in these settings now as an adult, I really notice just the quality of care. And is it an environment where people are happy and thriving, or is it one where there's significant work that needs to be done? And so.
So if you need the question repeated, but so I guess you can consider first-hand experience something that has been present in my life for a long time. Both grandfathers who served in World War II, also known as the Greatest Generation. One spent a lot of time in a nursing home in a rural area, and that was my first long-term experience. Complicated on and off health problems. He never thought he'd live that far into almost 90, just his desire to get out of there, the frustrations my aunts had with the staffing issues, which is nothing that the facility could really do about. So that was my first experience with that. Then both of my grandmothers, one who had dementia and the other Alzheimer's, they were able to receive some quality care because they lived in the metro, and it was just that because of that they seemed to get better quality care. I too worked in a group home, adult group home, REM, who runs a lot of nursing homes and facilities. The clients I worked with there were severely disabled. Many of them spent a lot of time here, and that was in the early 2000s when we considered a part-time job at these homes was actually pretty good pay. Back then it was about $9.50 an hour. That'd be about $13.50 an hour in today's dollars, and that was with inflation adjusted there, CPI, and that was. But those pay rates really, as we all know, stayed stagnant and flat for way too long. And during the time I was there, the turnover was constant, as it continues to be today, and just don't want to see that. So.
Well, I've known quite a few people in my time who are friends or relatives who have been in various situations, nursing homes, assisted living and such. But I guess two in particular I would cite is my father-in-law, who lived down in the Twin Cities with my mother-in-law, contracted Parkinson's disease a number of years ago. And it's all good for people to try to take care of their aging relatives in their own home for as long as they can. And sometimes I hear people complain that no, they don't want to do that. But I want to tell you that there really is a need for nursing homes, because I think about what happened with my father-in-law. My mother-in-law was and is a real saint. She took care of him for years. They weren't interested in moving up here to be with my family. They wanted to be there with their friends. But finally the day came where my father-in-law, who was very unsteady on his feet, actually fell over into the bathtub and couldn't get up. And my mother-in-law, who was in her early 80s herself, didn't have the strength to get him up either. And thank goodness there was no water in the tub at that point, but that was the point at which we finally said, Ellen, you just can't do this anymore. I mean, it's going to be time for Milt to go off to a nursing home. And he did. He's passed away now several years, but he got excellent care at the place he went to down in the Twin Cities. And you need to have skilled nursing facilities for people in, that sort of situation and many others. Another example I'd cite is someone some of you may know in town, my Uncle Don, who just passed away a couple months ago. My Uncle Don, Don Lundgren, probably sold more homes to people in St. Cloud than anyone in history. My uncle loved to sell. At the age of 79, while he was getting into his car in his garage on the way to go into work and sell houses, he suffered a stroke. And he never could go back to work. Unfortunately, it took a lot for him to adjust to it, but eventually he did, and he lived for another 6 years in an assisted living facility, Country Manor. His wife moved into an apartment there with him, and again, they had a very good quality of life in a situation where he obviously had some severe medical needs. And so there really is an important place for these facilities, and they're close to my heart, and I want to make sure we do what we need for them.
Well, I guess my first contact, is this working? Well, on my first contact with nursing homes would be my mother that actually worked in a nursing home out in western Minnesota, where I was growing up. And that made a huge impact, because she'd come home and you could tell the stress and strain that was on her to providing decent care for these folks. But other than that, my next contact would have been, I actually worked for Country Manor as a driver, and I took people to their medical appointments, to their dentist appointments. And I think the main thing there is that I seen is when you talk to them and you treated them just like they were as a real person, the interchange and the dialogue that you would have for these folks, and the joy that they'd see when you were the driver that was picking them up on that day. And I think that's what we fail to realize. Those folks that work in these skilled facilities actually develop a relationship with the people that they care for. And we need to provide that this is a real career for them for people to go into and to continue, because this is actually an excellent career, and it's a real satisfying career if you actually if we can just afford to keep them here. So that's been my experience. I truly loved that job when I was home and taking those people to their appointments, and I think we just need to do what we can do to make this a decent career for people to stay here. Thank you.
Well, I've had a little bit of experience with nursing homes. My mother-in-law, my husband and I were the family that lived in town with my mother-in-law. So she originally was in for rehab, and then when that was done, at home for a while. But then in addition, she ended up going back in and ended up passing away at the nursing home. My father-in-law was able to have some in-home care and passed away at home. But more importantly, my daughter worked as a CNA at this facility during college, went on to get her LPN, worked at Good Shepherd as an LPN for a while, and now has her RN and works at a long-term care facility in Painesville. Gave it away. I have guess which one it is. But so she works at a long-term care facility in Painesville, and little more indirectly, I have a lot to do with it because I babysit while she works. So I get to babysit grandbabies, and actually invited her here today, but she wasn't able to because her youngest is still not in school, and she was a little apprehensive about bringing her here and not knowing quite how if she would be running around in circles and distracting everybody. So, and then along with all that, I do have aging parents, and so we're dealing with just kind of the getting ready for things and making sure that things are in. Everyone's still at their home, but as we prepare for that, we see the challenge of just preparing and making sure everything is in line and ready to go when the need might come. So that's my experience with long-term care, and I do find that the facilities, not only that my in-laws were in and my daughter has worked in, have been just full of wonderful people. And I think Jeff said it the best, is we just got to keep them and make them able to afford to stay at those jobs, because so many of those people come with a passion. It's not just a job for them, it's a passion that they're taking care of these folks. So want to make sure that those facilities get the kind of resources that they need to continue their work.
Well, first I want to say that I've been very fortunate through my life to have had long-lived relatives and parents. Well, I shouldn't say parents, but long-lived relatives, and so I have not had to experience firsthand too much contact with nursing homes or long-term care facilities. I have, however, had contact through them through my professional life. I represented a nursing home in St. Charles where I was an attorney for about 11 years. I've done some work for the senior community here at St. Benedict's. I've also represented on different occasions other nursing care facilities and long-term care facilities. Through that, I've gotten a little bit of an understanding of the issues they face and the tremendous regulatory, I almost want to call it, ball of yarn that is intertwined, and in some cases you pull one string and you don't know what string is going to move. I think this is important. One of the big things I found, however, is in some of my relatives' families, they made a very large effort to provide care for their parents long term. Especially my sister-in-law cared for both her father-in-law and her mother all the way through death. They stayed at home through her assistance, and the support that she was given through the community was wonderful. And I think this is something we need to continue to support. We've kind of lost a little bit this concept that, family comes first. And if we can provide a way for people, I was heartened by the stories here earlier of people being able to stay in the home for a long time, but then at some point we recognize where the healthcare provider, the home healthcare provider, is just no longer capable, either because of their own infirmities or simply because of the difficulties of the person they're caring for. So I certainly support that. just to say that, that's about it that I have with the communities. I think it's an important service that we have to have, and I certainly support anything we can do to facilitate that sort of care.
I was a waiter in a retirement community about 25, 30 years ago, and I also worked as a PCA briefly, but neither of those experiences really taught me very much about aging or about these kinds of facilities. What's taught me most about aging is what I'm actually enduring right now. I mean, all of us have personal commitments to aging populations, but I'm kind of in the midst of it as we speak. My grandfather's 94. He was a chaplain in the Battle of the Bulge, and he's had a series of strokes. He's got Parkinson's, he's got prostate cancer. He still drinks a couple martinis a day, and he's absolutely unstoppable. Given the depth of his faith, this is a fascinating evidence to me of God's sense of humor, is he can't wait to die because he's been a priest for 60 years. His experience with aging is very particular. He had the good fortune and good wisdom to marry an incredibly patient spring chicken who is now, I think, 82. But she takes care of him in their house still, and they're perfectly content and happy with how they are aging. In contrast, however, right now, my mother-in-law is suffering from very serious dementia. She's only 69. And my father-in-law, who was a welder for 20 years and a truck driver for 20 years, has had a series of failed back surgeries and is non-ambulatory. And they currently live in rural Maine, a small house in the middle of nowhere. And my wife and I are struggling deeply with this right now. She's actually going to Maine next week to see what she can do. And we've been struggling with this for 3 years, trying to find the best way to make a whole family decision that respects their wishes and their desires for happiness, but also that protects their health. And so when I think of decisions and facilities like this, I think of them through that lens as a whole family decision, the one that must respect health, but also has to consider happiness as well.
This issue of long-term care and the providing of long-term care services is very personal for me. In recent years, I've had a number of experiences with relatives, particularly my grandfathers, one of whom, named Harvey, served our country in the Korean War, was a remarkable, high-energy, hard-working salesman. I've dearly looked up to him. He eventually had to transition out of his home and into an independent living facility. And then he eventually had to go to an assisted living facility and then receive hospice care. And through that experience just really underscores how important it is for everyone in our community and in our state. I really believe deserves nothing but the very best of those long-term care services. As we take a look at the demographics facing our state, in 2020, it's projected that there will be as many senior citizens in the state of Minnesota as there are children in our schools. So as a state, we've got to make sure that we're making investments in nursing homes and assisted living facilities all across the board in long-term care services, which we'll get more to throughout the program today. But we've got to make that a priority, and I'm excited to, for us to have this conversation as candidates and be committed to doing so.
All right, well, this issue of long-term care it's a wonderful thing to be talking about and addressing. I actually started right after high school back in 2000 working here at the St. Benedict Senior Community. And, you know, as a certified nursing assistant, you know, it was a great job to have at that time. You know, it kind of put me through school. I went to, you know, the Dow Institute and got a degree in holistic health therapy. I was able to become a physical therapy aide here at St. Benedict's, where I would, you know, help residents walk, help them do their stretches, you know, and just generally keep them in good physical shape and moving. When I was working here, one of the tragic parts for me was, you know, when I was a CNA, it seemed like we were always short-staffed. You know, we weren't able to give the residents the time, you know, and attention that they needed. And, you know, I see that now. I'm a behavioral aide. I work at a group home. We have a ratio. It's 2 staff to 1 client. This is a little bit different because it's in mental health, but I believe that we do need to have a, you know, kind of care provider ratio so that we're not having, you know, 20, 30 residents to 1 CNA. And so, but we are looking at a competitive job field as well, and there's such a shortage of good employees. And that makes it tough. So, I always advocate spending more on health and human services. I was very surprised when I was doing some research, and I found that even though the nursing homes got $168 million more over 2 years, the overall budget of health and human services was $300 million less. I think that kind of trend needs to change. I think that we need to continue to advocate for all of our health and human services, especially taking care of the elderly and the seniors, those that deserve the most respect from us because they've been there for us.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Krause.
Sorry,
All right.
Mr. Krause. I apologize.
I hope what I have to say is important.
I bet it is.
Well, I have a little bit of experience, not as much as a lot of people up here, and more than others, on dealing with long-term living. I grew up in foster care, so I have a lot more family than a lot of people because I have a lot of different families. But my biological family, my grandmother, she passed away at 68 years old in 2012, I believe. So you can kind of put an age on me. She had an in-home long-term care program. She had somebody come out 3 times a week, I believe, would come out and would test her blood, would ask her how she's feeling, would talk to her and have conversations with her, and that worked out well for her. While growing up in foster care, I have another grandmother. She's currently living in Watkins, as you recently talked about, and she is in her 80s, almost 90. Well, living at her house wasn't as easy of a goal for her because she had different needs. I think what's important to talk about a lot of these issues is not everybody has the same needs, not everyone has the same abilities, not everybody has the same family and support system around them. So when we have programs, we have to make sure that we are really making sure the programs are working for every single person, really individualizing what we have for our senior citizens. Right now we have less beds in Minnesota for nursing homes than has ever existed before, and we have a greater need, but that's basically the limit of what I have for experience. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Krause. There's so many of you, it's hard to keep track of you all. As I get ready to ask question number 2, Anne, I think we're going to start with you for this one, if you want to get ready for a mic, and I'll read the questions just so everybody's on the same page. The senior care sector in Minnesota is facing severe staffing shortages to adequately cover the needs of Minnesota's growing senior population. According to the Long-Term Care Imperatives last legislative survey, there are at least 2,500 vacant positions in Minnesota nursing homes statewide. While the state legislature made some progress in improving wages and training opportunities for those working in the field in the last biennium, it is clear that more needs to be done, as it is projected that the demand for people in this field will only continue to grow. What policy ideas do you have to address this issue? And again, each candidate will have 2 minutes for this question.
Yeah, so I'll jump right in. I really like this question. So I'm somebody who I think a lot in terms of systems. I think a lot in terms of like what's the reality we're all faced with and we're living in, and this idea that once again like issues aren't separate. I want to highlight though before I dig into this question, we've been talking a lot about nursing homes and kind of like I think the seniors that have significant needs in terms of support. But I think it's only like when I was in grad school, I think it was like 5% of Maine residents end up in a nursing home. And I also think it's important, as much as we're saying, oh, there's all these new seniors, to remember, and I think probably many of you in the room are well aware of this fact, that most of the seniors that are now, most of the people who are now retiring are like the healthiest that they've ever been. And that, it's not like life is over anytime soon, right? Like, there's still lots of years of living and doing all sorts of things. So I just want to put that out there, as it's not like, oh my gosh, we've got this crisis. That said, we do have a crisis. We have a crisis with aging adults, and what are we going to do in the state of Minnesota? And then I immediately start thinking, what are the other crises we have facing us here locally and across the state? And one of the ones I think about often is I think about poverty. And I think about how many families are now living in poverty. It's like 1 in every 10 families in the state of Minnesota is living below the poverty line. That's significant. Okay, so now I think about, well, why, how can we fill these jobs? And I think about why is it nobody's signing up for the jobs? Well, they're underpaid. This is women's work. When I went to grad school in Maine, I was digging around trying to find this article I submitted and got printed at the paper there because I was outlining, along with a colleague of mine, the demographics of the workers. And it's women, it's oftentimes young women, it's women raising kids, it's women taking care of other people in their family, whether it's a disabled child. So it's like women, we have got to get ourselves organized. Now, is it just women? No, I just mentioned my brother, who has a disability, is a working PCA. 10 seconds? No way. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'll just say this. I mean, I'll just jump. I think we need a pilot program in Stearns County. When we met with the Stearns County workforce, they said that there's the three top workforce. There's home healthcare professionals, then it's manufacturing, then it's agriculture. The fastest growing field in this area is home care health, professionals, right? We don't invest in it. We don't invest in it. Why? There's no money in it. We invest in manufacturing. Manufacturing's volatile. Okay, let's still invest in manufacturing, but let's go back to home health care, okay? So I'll stop there. Maybe I can pick up later. All right.
Question me, what policy ideas do you have to address this issue? The issue being constant turnover of staff. And being somebody who works in the healthcare field, I see this at the mental health center. We always have positions open. We are a nonprofit mental health center, meaning we always have positions open. And part of the reason is a lot of the training that folks have to do, whether it's 10 years of school and 6-figure student loan debt that they feel like they're never going to pay off, or if it's just the fact that the work people do in the healthcare field is God's work in so many ways. We here in St. Cloud have a very unique opportunity. Something I was working on when I was in the House was more of a local AmeriCorps kind of VISTA program. We know that CNAs are often a stepping stone to the next job, to be the LPN or to the RN. Well, how can we hang on to them longer? Why can't we team up with our schools and universities right here, provide some student loan reimbursement programs at the local level? It'd be nice if the feds would help out, but we can't wait for them. We just can't. And provide that incentive for that student who knows they're going to graduate on average from 4U University of Minnesota with $30,000 in debt. Help them help the community and not be burdened financially for the rest of their life for doing so. So I think that's a very specific thing I know I personally am going to work very hard on, is helping those who are seeking the education and providing them the opportunity to afford that. And right here we have several colleges and universities with a lot of talent and a lot of opportunity to keep those folks working here a little longer and provide them training at the school and here, and I think it's a win-win situation.
Well, firstly, before I get into answering the question, I do need to correct something that was said. We had a very significant increase in health and human service funding over the last 2 years. We did not have a $300 million cut. In fact, I'll tell you, the first major hearing we had on the budget forecast that we had at the beginning of 2015, because the state runs on sort of a 2-year budget cycle, we looked at, if the law stayed the same, how much would spending go up? And if the legislature back in 2015 did nothing and we went home, the total spending from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2017, our 2-year budget year, would have gone up $1.9 billion. But of that, $1.4 billion was one program, medical assistance, a health and human services item. And there were other items in the remaining $500 million that were health and human services too. And actually in the end, we added additional money over and beyond that into Health and Human Services spending, such as the additional money for nursing homes that I talked about earlier. So we had a very significant increase in Health and Human Service funding over the last 2 years. Having said that, you know, certainly you can't stand still. I think that what we did has helped with some of the employee issues and turnover issues in facilities like this one. But we're going to have to continue to have funding increases for certainly COLAs, other issues that come up. But beyond that, you know, there are other things we need to, I think, look at too. This is a very, very regulated business. There is a lot of paperwork, and you know, we do need to have regulations. We do need to make sure that we know our elderly that are in these homes are being provided for. But you know, are there ways through technology or some other way that we can cut down on some of the paperwork? You know, can we maybe move some of those people in time into providing other care? You know, I think we need to look at things like that in addition to putting in more money, which I'm sure we will do again.
Well, thank you. And I tell you what, this staff shortage hit us, my family, pretty significantly last year. My mother had surgery. She needed a place to go for about a week or 2 weeks to rehab. And she lives in western Minnesota, had the surgery out in western Minnesota. And it wasn't that there wasn't any beds available in these nursing homes for her to go to, the rehab facilities, but there wasn't any staffing to fill those beds. So the beds weren't available. And that's where it hit home for me. We just had nowhere for her to go. So she ended up, we made amends with my brother. My brother took her in and did it at his home. I got to, you know, and the cost of, you know, we did something to help with last year, as Representative Knobloch said, we did some things for those nurses that on their education costs and doing some of those things with loan forgiveness, that type of thing. You know, I will say that my niece just graduated from an RN program on a for-profit school. She came out of there with $80,000 worth of debt. That's a huge burden for some young person to face. And the reason she ended up going to a for-profit school to get that done, there weren't any seats. She couldn't get in to a public school to get that done. She had, if she this is what she wanted to do, she was either going to have to wait to get into a school, or she was going to have to pay the freight of a for-profit school to go to the training. So I do believe that there's probably more that we can do, is probably increase some seats at the local colleges for that. And I also believe we probably need to bring back the CNA piece of that requirement to become a nurse. I do believe that probably pays a big dividend for us in the future. Thank you.
And building a little bit on what Representative Howe was talking about, you know, we did increase the wages. Representative Knobloch mentioned that. You know, the scholarships that we're providing, in addition, on the loan forgiveness for, in particular for RNs in rural areas or LPNs in rural areas, I think we could do, and just really minor, but do some tweaking on those so that they're a little more accessible to those folks that actually choose to work in nursing, so that it's not such a difficult thing to get a hold of, but they're actually able to use those loan forgiveness programs. Do some outreach to youth so that they understand the program and the CNA part of that. But in addition, for higher ed, we need to expand some of those nursing programs, but potentially create a nursing program that moves from CNA to LPN to RN, 2-year RN to 4-year RN, so that people can work while they're going to school if they choose to, because some of them may have families to support, things like that, so that we could make MnSCU and U of M and the other schools more, I guess, user-friendly is the word maybe I'm looking for those folks, so that they can make it through and expanding those programs and making them easier to use for folks. I think everybody kind of covered everything, but you know, just making sure that we don't lose the quality of those programs when we do start to expand, you know, because the temptation is to, okay, well, get them bigger, let more people in, but you may be lowering those standards too. So we don't want to, you know, catch 22 there. So we want to make sure when we are expanding those that we're doing it with quality and making them work for folks. But I do understand that there, you know, I think mentioned this morning talking about opening up the pages, and there's RNs, there's you know, everywhere. There's just tons of jobs everywhere in all kinds of different field, you know, different areas for RN. So we do need to make this kind of work attractive and help people understand the satisfaction that they get from this kind of work.
Ditto. Pretty much covered it. I want to just expand on a couple of things. First of all, Michelle referred to the meeting this morning. I would say possibly half of the time that we spent this morning was on this very issue of the nursing care, of nursing shortage of nurses for not only nursing homes, but you've got hospitals, and then you have the other alternative, long-term care facilities. You have the in-home care, you have the group homes, you have all of these facilities that all require nursing. By regulation, they require nursing. There is no shortcut, so we have to support these programs. A couple of thoughts on that. First of all, I have a stepson who is currently a CNA and is hoping to go back into the nursing program when he comes back from overseas. He's in the Peace Corps right now. And that CNA will give him the opportunity to not only work while he's in school, but also get what I would like to term on-the-job training. And I think one of the things that we can do to improve the quality of care that nurses will be ultimately giving is for them to have had this kind of internship or direct experience in the providing of care. And I certainly support that, and I support programs that would encourage and incentivize employers to provide places for nursing students to be able to work in an internship type of atmosphere under qualified supervision. They will learn faster and they will learn more. I think something that's kind of overlooked in this, and that is the tech colleges. I have a spouse who teaches at the technical college, actually teaches in the health field. The ability of a technical college to provide a quality education at a low cost is something we have to support and encourage. The other thing is that the business community partnership, get kids interested in this. Start in the 7th and 8th grade. Let them shadow a nurse. Let them do this sort of thing so that as they go forward, they can be looking for the skills as they are going through high school to become a nurse. So I see that the sign is about to come up, and I'll pass it on for you.
I'm glad to finally know what that means. I wasn't quite sure what the 10 was about. I thought that was a score for nailing the dismount. So a couple weeks ago, I visited Sterling Park in Wake Park. Is this on? Yeah. And I had a nice long conversation with the director there, Jason Hoyt. We talked a great deal about the particular challenges facing his facility. And I expected to hear lots of concerns about funding and staffing ratios, and clearly that is a legitimate concern, staffing ratio is. But he was most concerned by turnover, by staff moving from one place to the next, and moving around in the area to get better benefits, to get better jobs. And he said there were 6 different facilities through which a lot of his population, a lot of his staff sort of moved around from. So I think this is an incredibly complicated issue, and we have lots of different types of employment to deal with, and we're also dealing with millennials too, this new population that's going to be doing this job. And what is it? I think millennials typically have 11 jobs by the time they're 35. We have a radically different understanding of the workforce nowadays than we did, I think, 30, 40 years ago, and we need to attend to those differences. So for me, I think the best solutions to this are similar to what people have said before, and that's education and job satisfaction. The first being the education issue. I'm very glad that Zach initiated our conversation on this. I think that was very insightful of him to have us start talking about student loans being an issue when it comes to this kind of training. One of the things that I want to do, not just with this particular profession, but kind of throughout the community, is lower the walls between higher education and the public. I'm uniquely suited to do that, frankly. And that's to get the universities more involved, universities and the technical colleges more involved in the community itself. in internships and mentorship programs and those kinds of things, so that people know what they're getting into before they go into the profession, which then increases the likelihood that they will commit to it and continue to do it for longer periods of time. And when it comes to job satisfaction, not having done the job for any extended period of time, I think that we do have tremendous issues with paperwork and administrative bloat that are common throughout healthcare industries that also need to be taken into consideration.
Well, the amount of staff shortages we have in the senior care industry and sector is very alarming. And as our demographics change over the next few years, the demand for those services is going to increase. So we've got to have some real policy goals to tackle that. And two factors for me are increasing opportunity and increasing wages. When we have individuals that are interested in getting involved in this sector, we've got to make sure that they have the education and the training that they need to enter it. Some tools for incentive that I think Zach and Eric have already mentioned, but I want to reiterate my support for, are scholarships and loan reimbursement, loan forgiveness, and tuition reimbursement, and other things that we can do to incentivize our talented students to stick around Minnesota and help us address this shortage. And then also, of course, the biggest incentive of all is wages. We absolutely have to continue to increase the payment rates to nursing homes, the work that the legislature has done on that in recent years. Because when nursing homes are paid for the actual cost of the care they provide, they're going to be able to pay their employees competitive wages, and that will go a long way to reducing the turnover and attracting quality employees for these much needed positions. So those are some of the policy ideas that I have to tackle this alarming shortage.
Well, I think, everybody's been saying some really great things. I think, Annie Buckfold really said it well when she said we have to look at poverty. We have to look at some of these really, compassionate choices that we are all making with our own families and, within our communities. And, when I look at my lifestyle right now and I look at the altruism that's kind of motivating me to even run for state office, I have to look at, why I had such a good upbringing. And I think in part my grandparents, I think my family, and, I had a good Catholic upbringing. I was taught the values of having good morality and ethics and going into healthcare because I believed in that cause. I believed in that form of right livelihood. And so I think that when we can kind of teach secular ethics at the school level, at the elementary school level, at through grade school, that's going to really help our children to learn why we're doing things, not just how to do things, but it will motivate them. And we can have paid family leave, we can have earned sick and safe time, because people that are working in healthcare, they would be content with working at these livable wages if they had those benefits, if they had paid health insurance, if they had things that really mattered to just kind of sustain a good quality of life, because we know it's not about money. We know it's about our social interactions, and that's really what counts in life.
Mr. Krause, I haven't forgotten about you.
Hey, thank you. There's been some really good points brought up by a lot of the people up here. I think one of the ones that I really appreciate is the education standpoint. We do not have nearly the investments that we should have into education. Whenever there's times to pass levies, to pass anything to deal with education, it becomes this big fight and fails oftentimes. We have jobs. Right now, I work at a manufacturing plant. What are the reasons why people quit a job there? Low pay, stress at work, stress at home, or schedule issues. Working in a long care facility, every one of those would apply to you. We have not enough investments into the education for people to become RNs. We really try to pull all these investments away from our citizens because we want to focus on other issues. There's a significant amount of kids that graduate high school and don't attend college, don't attend any sort of school. And the reasoning why is because they don't feel like they have the financial means to be able to do it, and they feel like they don't have the support to be able to do it from their community, from their family, from whoever it could be that they could feel that from. Now, with low pay, we can always increase pay for healthcare workers. The one thing that we need to be able to do is schedule issues. When you're working 8 hours on, 8 hours off, or 10 hours on, 10 hours off, or however the schedule is working, that's a big commitment for a lot of people to do, even for a median wage in a community. That's a very tough ask, and when if we can build up our workforce, then we can actually fix a lot of these schedule issues and make it a more happy environment, a better place to work for a lot of these people. Thank you.
I have to talk fast because I have a lot to say. Being on the Aging and Long-Term Committee, one of the first things we did after session is we started organizing some tours to get into the nursing homes to see what we did or what we were talking about, how that was affecting folks right away. And so in the area, we went to see Good Shepherd, St. Ben's, and Sterling Park. And what we heard was basically some of the same things you heard. We have to really get a hold of what we're doing with our staff, and rural areas especially. I mean, we can talk about getting folks here, but more rural areas are having a heck of a time. And so some of the things that we talked about last session and some of the things that we did get passed was doing the loan forgiveness. We're also, some of the things we talked about was the fact that CNA is no longer a requirement. But I think part of that also is, with the high schools, our curriculum has gotten to be so much more now for a 4-year that we kind of forget about the vocational education pieces of it, and so you don't see as many, or they don't have the time to take these types of classes. And when I grew up, a lot of my friends were getting their CNAs in high school because they were working in Kimball, in Watkins, or wherever. And we're not seeing that progression, we're not seeing that participation in the field before they even start hitting college. Now when we talk about higher education, some of the things, I'm also on the bonding committee, and went to the tours, and what we saw for a lot of our technical colleges was the fact that they were looking for bonding dollars to increase their laboratories, their labs, so that they could get more medical folks through the programs. And one of the things here in St. Cloud, at St. Cloud State is we've been working hard on getting Eastman Hall funded, because that's going to be a healthcare building, so that they can expand what they do too, and also try to get some practical experience for the folks that are going there. We have a lot of competition in this area, because we're not only are we competing against the different nursing homes, but we also have the VA and we have Centricare. And so we really have to be cognizant that we really do put dollars to where they really, really should go. But I think we also need to look at our existing laws and make sure that what we have in place isn't hindering folks going out and getting that education and going into those fields.
All right, thanks everyone. This next question, Mr. Dorholt, we're going to start with you. And if it doesn't throw anyone off too much, because in the interest of time, I think this is probably going to be the last question that we're going to get. Would it be okay if we start with the question number 4 instead of 3? Everybody gonna be okay?
I really like 3.
I like 3 too.
Yeah, me too.
I like 3. Gary, do what you want. It's your gig.
We're going to go to number 4 in the interest of time.
Well, answer number 3. Use 1 minute. Answer number 3.
There you go. I've lost control. Let me read the question while y'all get acclimated here. Minnesota has made great strides in creating choices and options for seniors to receive care outside a nursing home, as evidenced by the fact that twice Minnesota has been named #1 on the National Long-Term Care Scorecard for providing choice of settings. However, the public program that funds community care options for low-income seniors, called Elderly Waiver, has not been significantly reformed in years, and as a result, the program falls short in covering the needs of seniors on this program. Seniors, in turn, have difficulty finding community care providers that are willing to accept the Elderly Waiver payments. Ultimately, low-income seniors are frequently left with limited options. such as more costly nursing homes to meet their needs. So the question is, do you support reforms to the elderly waiver program so that community care options can become more accessible to low-income seniors throughout the state? And do you have specific ideas of what should be included in those reforms? And again, we'll start with you, Mr. Dorholt.
Specific. We have some things in the mental health field that seem to work to, say, fund the gap. The problem here, the elderly waiver program, I relate it closely to folks who have just Medicare in my field. That Medicare, they can see for a mental health professional an approved licensed psychologist or LICSW. Try getting into one of those. 6 months at best. And this is, as I don't know, Dan Wolgamott used the term silver tsunami that's about us. So much of it is, for me, the mental health part is significant. Our client load is getting older, and mental health needs are becoming more significant. The providers who we need to provide those needs are becoming fewer and further between. Ongoing discussion. It's nice that Minnesota is, at the top in so many things, and we want to stay that way. But in order to address the ongoing needs, some ideas we have, for example, I'm getting a little technical here, but we have some folks who have Medicaid and then have their PMAP, so they can see an LPCC or an LMFT, which are two other mental health professionals who do therapy and counseling, and most of the time do just as good work as a psychologist, if not better. Annie Buffalo should mention systems. As someone who has a degree in marriage and family therapy from Catholic University, I too am a systems thinker. And it can't be just this elderly care waiver program. However, that needs to be a significant part of the overall care of all of our health, because we are all in this together.
Well, the question correctly describes that Minnesota has been a pioneer in this area for many years. We were far ahead, and I think still are far ahead of many states in providing options for seniors to stay in their homes as opposed to bringing them off to the nursing home, which is much more expensive for the state and, generally speaking, for many seniors, a place that they don't want to go to if they still have an option of somehow being able to stay in their home. But there certainly is more that we can do. I was pleased actually this last weekend. I was in Rochester and I got an award from the National Federation of the Blind, the Minnesota chapter, for the work that I did this year in allocating money to them to help seniors who are having more vision difficulties, seniors who are becoming blind, in being able to stay in their homes longer instead of going to a nursing home. Basically, this program that we put funding into will help with training seniors that are having macular degeneration or other vision problems be able to stay in their homes as opposed to going to a nursing home that they otherwise maybe would be doing underneath the current system that we have now. And so I think that we need to be looking at programs like this. There's wonderful care that people receive here at St. Benedict Center. All of you who are employees here, I've heard of the great job that you're doing. I know people here that are very happy, but I think most people, if they can, would like to be able to stay in their home longer. And so when you look at the elderly waiver, if we need to beef up the reimbursement rates for that, then we should do that. It's still going to be less expensive, more than likely, than what we're going to pay as a state in terms of subsidizing someone in the nursing home. And while I'm at it, I'd also say that we need to look at trying to increase the pay for some of the care providers that are helping people stay out of the nursing homes too, these in-home care providers. That's something that I would have liked to have seen happen this last year. We had it in our House bill to do a 5% increase. Unfortunately, the governor and the Senate wouldn't go along with it, but that's something we really need to do this next year.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know we've been kind of on the cutting edge of that as far as the state goes, but there's always more work to do. I do agree with Jim. The more we can do to keep people in their homes, the better off we are. I do believe we need to increase some funding for rural transit, that type of thing, so people can get to their doctor's appointments, they can get to where they need to go. Funding for the elderly waiver program, that's a difficult thing. I agree that we need to increase the funding, but exactly how you put that and where that money goes, I think is crucial to be able to identify exactly where it and kind of pigeonhole it or buttonhole it to where it goes where it needs to. But I'm going to leave it at that, because I firmly believe the longer my mother's 84 years old. She drives all over the place. Probably shouldn't. Still at home, and she's loving it at home. But she still lives on the old family farm. Wants to get off of that, move into town, so she can have be closer to her friends. And I don't ever see her going to a nursing home, but that's probably where she's going to end up sooner or later, because she's just as healthy as a horse.
That bodes well for you. So, and I support the elderly waiver, but I think that question 3 and 4 kind of do go together. The question 4 was about how to, how to encourage family. I got it. How families, how we're going to help families plan for the financial cost of long-term care. And I think that an elderly waiver and encouraging those kinds of programs helps assist in that. If we're, promoting those kinds of alternatives and supporting those kinds of alternatives on a state level, we do keep people in their homes longer. We meet their level of care, we meet the needs that they have, and keeping them in their homes. I mean, eventually, there are folks who are going to end up in a nursing home, and we're going to have, they'll need that higher level of care. But as long as we are able to supply these kinds of and support these kinds of programs that help people, whether it be Meals on Wheels, whether it be the transit that Representative Howe mentioned, with the elderly waiver, we can keep people in their homes and encourage those things, and then eventually they will step up to that higher level of care. So yes, I support it. As for reforms, there's a discussion. I think it's been there. I think that the groups, the Leading Age Minnesota, the long-term care imperative, I'm trying to think of all the names that you go under, whatever it may be, but they're going to lead the way, I think. They understand where the needs are for that reform. I understand there may be some formula changes. I believe they're coming up with some legislation, some ideas for next year, but I think we should, as legislators, take our lead from them, because they're on the front lines. They know what's going on. They know what needs to be done. And legislators can't be experts in everything, although some of us might like to think we are. I don't know, but we can't be experts on everything. So for us to use the knowledge that the groups have, so that we can improve that program, make it solid, and potentially increase the formula too. Thank you.
You've got to quit stealing my thunder.
Oh, we shouldn't sit next to each other.
No, obviously, elder waiver needs to be reviewed. There's no question about it. It's been around for a while. It's a good program. I support it. As I said earlier, I very much support keeping people in a comfortable setting that they're familiar with. I support trying to help healthcare providers, caregivers, to be able to allow that to happen. I also have a mother-in-law who's almost 92 years old. She drives. She's the Energizer Bunny. I pray that she can just stay there and live out her life with a great quality of life. I think one thing, though, that did come up this morning that needs some airing out, and that is that the people who do provide in-home care are subject to some, and also some of the group homes are subject to some regulations that I think maybe need to be examined. And one of these is the method that they are required to employ nursing care, skilled nursing care. Whether this needs to be changed, I don't know, but it does provide a very special burden on them, because they are only reimbursed, as I understand it, for the actual supply or providing of specific administration of drugs, specific things related to nursing care of the person. Well, if they have to drive 45 minutes to get to someone's house to provide that care, the person who is retaining that nurse has to swallow that cost. We have to look at that. We have to look at a way of helping these care providers to meet the expenses that they are actually facing that maybe don't directly relate to the administration of health care, but relate to the providing of the general overall care that the person is giving and that the client or patient is receiving. So I think this is one area that we can actually take a good look at. I think that's really the crux of it, that we need to take a long look and get more money into this. And I hate to say, I tend to agree with my opponent here that we do need to raise wages. There's no question. We have to find a way through reimbursement to raise the wages so we do get quality people coming into and staying in the field.
I have to apologize at the outset. I need to jump at about 2:30 when I think we were initially planned to be done. My wife is a principal at Kennedy Community School, and she works 27 hours a day. So I'm primary caregiver, and if I don't get home in time, my kids go straight to the Xbox, and that's not going to happen. So I am going to have to leave, and I apologize for that. I also probably should apologize for cheating on the question, because I think 3 and 4 are very closely related as well. So consider this answer 3.5, if that's helpful. Because I think that a fundamental issue that we're dealing with here is the question of long-term planning and having a comprehensive, inclusive perspective on long-term care. Not finding simple single solutions, but realizing how the solutions interact with each other and relate to the particular problems that we face. So when it comes to funding and thinking about how to plan for long-term care, I think we need to incentivize long-term partnership long-term care insurance to get more people getting that kind of insurance so that they can retain their wealth, they don't have to spend down, and they can still think thoroughly about what's going to happen to them as they get older when they're not. I think that's the first step that we need to take, and that's across the board for all of the issues that I think we need to address, is being more forward-thinking when it comes to these kinds of issues. I'm interested in this elderly waiver program. It sounds fascinating, and I think it sounds like a very good idea in a lot of ways, but we also need to attend to or be careful about what funding would then not be coming in other directions. The idea of staying at home, I think, is a wonderful thing for those who can do it, but then I can't stop thinking about my in-laws who are staying home, bereft of community, staying in their home to age out of fear and lack of other options. And one of the things I noticed as I was researching for today, because that's what I do, I'm a dork, but as I was researching for today, was the notion of an urban village. It's a fascinating concept, the notion of the urban village, a kind of grassroots, kind of collective elder care facility that started in Boston, and now there's several of them in Minnesota, actually. There's 3 in Minnesota, 2 in Minneapolis. And it's an idea of sort of senior people living together in an apartment complex, sharing resources, sharing facilities. It's kind of a halfway ground between a nursing home and staying at home. And I think that those are the kinds of things that we need to think about a little bit, explore and see what they're all about.
I also need to apologize. I too am going to need to leave at 2:30. I think I mentioned I coach 9th grade football, so it's part of my job is to get there early and prepare the field and turn the water on, etc. But we'll certainly would be happy to follow up if anyone has any questions. Feel free to give me a ring or send me an email. As far as the elderly waiver program, I agree with what Representative Howe said and what many of us have said, that the longer we can keep individuals in a setting in which they're receiving community care, the better. And so absolutely our state has got to provide adequate funding for this program. And that's a smart investment for us, because in the long run it's going to save our state money in medical assistance by making sure that people can get that care in a community setting and not in a more expensive institutional setting. So two things I just want to add to what's been said. We've got to make elderly waiver recipients more attractive providers by, first, what's been mentioned, increasing resources in that investment. And then number 2, I think it's important that we overhaul the types of services that are covered to reflect changes and advancements in technology. So, but yes, this is absolutely, again, especially with changing demographics, we've got to make sure and provide resources to this important program.
We will wrap
Okay, great.
Yes, I absolutely do support reform in the elderly waiver program. I think that, you know, we want to keep people living comfortably in their own homes. I think that that's a wonderful thing. I agree, you know, with Mr. Ralph that, you know, we want to look at transportation. That's a large part of kind of budgeting for a lot of home care workers. We need to include that in their pay. We need to generally raise their pay. And, you know, this year I was kind of surprised too that our legislature didn't include overtime pay for home care workers. We have people that are very passionate about doing home care work, and if they're willing to put in overtime hours, we should let them, because we have a shortage right now, and that's quality one-to-one care. You know that client or that resident is actually getting taken care of. And, you know, if you look at what they're getting paid now, like maybe $10 or $11 on this elderly waiver program, you give them overtime and they're at about $15 an hour, which is actual minimum wage, the livable wage, $15. So, you know, I think absolutely there needs to be some reform there. I think, you know, people that get into this business, you know, of healthcare are in it for the right reason, but they need to take care of themselves too. And I think that, you know, if they're happy, they're going to kind of pass that along to others. And yeah, so that's all I got. Thank you.
All right. Just working. All right, there it is. I did bring some information with me. I tried to be prepared. This is actually, I believe it's from the state of Minnesota. Elderly waiver program saved the state of Minnesota up to $275 million in 2010. That's obviously a program that we like because it saves us money, but we also have to make sure that the people that are taking advantage, I believe as Eric Putnam said, are doing it because it's what's best for them, not because they have no other options. Sometimes we have programs that are used, and they're used for one reason, and it's not the reason why everybody else thinks they're used. I do support reform in these programs because I think that we need to ensure, as a couple other people have said, that the people that are providing these services are paid a livable wage. I think that's very important. That's how you maintain people staying in these jobs, and people can actually do these jobs as full-time jobs. I know a couple people that do work like this, and they do it as part-time work, and they work in the factory that I work in at the same time, because that's what they have to do to be able to afford to do this, and they do it out of passion instead of doing it, which is a great thing, but you also need people that need be able to use that same passion and do it full-time also. So thank you very much for listening to me speak a little bit.
Last year, the legislature, we started out with nursing homes, and we knew that was going to be our plan for aging and long-term care. And one of the things we know we have to do is continue that work forward, and that includes the elderly waiver. And it doesn't hurt to look at things and reform them, because I think everything needs tweaking here and there when you find out how needs change and what's happening. And we also need to make sure that it does what it's intended, so that it isn't being used unwisely. But some of the things that we did talk about, and some of the things we did, some we did get through, was we did get some money towards the Wilder Foundation doing a study on some of the products that are available for home innovation to keep folks in their homes longer. So we're looking forward to seeing which products we can get behind and maybe do some work in making sure we can get those in homes. Some of the things we talked about too is no longer taxing Social Security. We haven't heard anything about that yet, but we did have, I think, 3 bills come through the committee. One was included, and I don't remember which one it was. We had one that was a reduction of 20% for 5 years, and one that was 10% reduction for 10 years, and I can't remember what the third one is. But the Senate and the governor did not have an appetite for that, so it went nowhere. Some of the other options we're looking at or talking at is possibly taking some of these universal or whole life insurance policies, and when you reach a certain age and say, okay, maybe I don't need that money, we can convert it to long-term care, because folks aren't taking out the long-term care products that we were hoping they would. And another bill that was introduced was one by the chair, Representative Schumacher, and what that is making almost like a long-term care savings account, like an HSA. And what you'd be able to do is to put that in at any age, and you could start it in your 20s, because our goal is for folks to start thinking about it. But if something did happen and you needed to go to a nursing home for some care, you would be able to access that money for that. So those are some of the things we've talked about, and I'm sure we'll talk about them again next year.
Yeah, so in response to question 4, my answer is yes. And do I have specific ideas? Yes. Some of them my colleagues mentioned. Transit, yes. I'm going to go back to question 3 because that question is critical to the long-term economic health of our region and our state. And here's why. So back to my point where I was saying, well, first I just want to say we need to professionalize and put healthcare professionals on a path to make at least $15 an hour. And this is why. As I mentioned, the Workforce Center, Tri-County area, said the largest pool of workers in this area is healthcare professionals, and it's set to grow, okay? And then a second thing about the Workforce Center, they recently made a tool, it's the only one of its kind in the country, where a business that's located in Minnesota can plug in all this information about the town they want to move to and find out what does a worker need to earn in order to afford the basics, housing, education, daycare, whatever, okay? Not long-term planning, not retirement, just what does a person need to make in an area in order to afford the basics. And here in St. Cloud, that number to the penny is $14.23, right? Does that make sense to people? So when there are some references in here to taxpayers and like what are we gonna, how are we gonna use these sparse tax dollars? I think what about all the tax dollars we could earn if we were investing in these workers, right? We'd increase the tax base if we had workers that were paid a wage where they can actually afford the basics and then maybe even afford some long-term planning for themselves. So that really gets to the heart of the question. How can we help families finance their long-term care needs? And I just want to say too, the more we're supporting families, that money's going to go back into the community. Really quick, I just want to see from people, how many of you know a single mom that's raising kids? Okay, so it looks like most of you do. I just want to point out that for single moms who are raising kids, many of them are living in poverty, okay? Like I said, this is women's work. So in all 4 districts, that number, if a female is leading a house and she's single, these statistics there's no statistics for men raising kids alone. Those numbers for all 4 districts is over 30%. If you're in my district and you're raising children below the age of 5, your chances of being in poverty increase to 70%. So I have 2 twin daughters, they're 3.5, they're in daycare. If anything happens to my husband, I could easily find myself in the statistic. This has to do with me, this has to do with my ability to take care of my parents as an individual, and I'm also thinking about as a state, what's our capacity to take care of one another? Thanks.
Thank you very much to all the candidates. Let's see, because I started with you, Mr. Dorhold, is that right? I know I'm still keeping track. I thank all the candidates for coming. Stay there just one second. We clearly have more questions than we have time for, and we've just scratched the surface on the ones that we've covered. In the interest of time to get you out here at 2:30, Mr. Putnam, I'm going to start with you. If we could just do a quick round, remind everybody what your name is, what office you're running for, and that will be our way of closing comments, and then we'll sort of release for the yummy treats that St. Benedict's has provided for anybody who can stay. So, Mr. Putnam.
Thanks all for being here. I'm still Eric Putnam, and I'm still running for House District 14A, and I'm running out the door very soon too. I appreciate you all being here, and I've learned a great deal today. Thanks much.
We'll go to Mr. Wolgamott. Yes, we'll go too.
All right, again, I'm Dan Wolgamott, running for the Minnesota Senate in District 14, St. Cloud, Wake Park, St. Augusta, Minden-Haven Township. Thanks so much, everyone, for the work that you do and for being here to take part in this conversation. And I'd be very excited to earn your vote and go to St. Paul and really tackle these very important issues that we have facing us in the long-term care industry. Thank you.
Mr. Williamson, we'll just keep going around the circle.
My name is Michael Williamson. I'm a DFL endorsed candidate for State Senate in District 13. I hold leadership and progressive values.
All right, my name is Matthew Krause. I'm running for State House Representatives District 13B. which includes Sauk Rapids, Sartell, Holding Ford, part of Avon. And I really want to thank everybody for showing up and listening to us, and I want to thank everybody else, all the candidates here also for engaging in a good conversation, so thank you.
My name is Tam Tice. I'm the state representative for District 14A, which is Wade Park, St. Augusta, the west and south part of St. Cloud, and I look forward to continuing the work that we started last session.
My name is Annie Buckfold. I live in St. Joe. I'm running for House Seat 13A. I'm really excited to get down there and work on issues of transportation. I'd like to get the North Star train up here as part of a larger transportation bill. And as you can see, I'm also quite passionate about aging care and issues of care and support for our most vulnerable residents in the state. So if you live in my district, hope you vote for me.
Zach Dorholt, 14B, half of St. Cloud, Minden and Haven Township. Mental health professional. If elected, I'd likely be, quite possibly be the only active healthcare provider out of the 201 legislative body, and definitely the only mental health professional. These tables here need to be flipped when we get back, because it's your voices, the people who do the work, that have the ideas that work. Okay, so we need, and my door will always be open. I'm a professional listener, so I look forward to listening about your ideas about what works in your element of healthcare. I know what works in mine.
I am Jim Knobloch. I'm the current state representative for District 14B. You, as you are sitting here, are in District 14B. It's the east side of St. Cloud, a couple of townships on the east side, most of the north side between the river and Highway 15, and some of the area by St. Cloud State and Tech High School. And it's been my privilege to represent you in this area for the last 2 years. And I'll be hanging around afterwards if people have other issues they want to bring up. But I thank all the people who are employees here for the good work that you do taking care of our senior citizens that have put so much into this community over the years. And I look forward to talking to some of the senior citizens who are here as well. Thanks again for coming today.
Well, thank you. My name is Jeff Howe. I'm the current state representative for 13A. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. I have served through, I've had the honor of serving 2 terms, and I hope to have the privilege of going down there and serving another. Thank you.
And I'm Michelle Fishbach. I'm the current state senator from District 13, and you'll always remember it's the C. So if you live in the C, I would appreciate your vote. But I am looking forward to continuing my work on the Health and Human Services Finance Committee and working on those reforms that we talked about that are so needed at this point. Thanks.
And I'm Jerry Ralph. I'm inside the C, as I said before, running for Senate District 14 seat. I just want to thank you all for being here. The issues that we face in the healthcare area as a broad measure are very, very complex. We need to very carefully review everything that we have here, and I look forward to being able to earn your trust to go down there to take care of these problems. So I ask for your vote in November, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you all candidates. Please join me in thanking the candidates for a very respectful conversation today. And don't forget to vote in November. Thank you.